Welcome back, everybody, to the Mastering Rod Building Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Faulkner, and we have a very special treat today. I am joined today by Jim, the Dragon Master Upton. Jim probably needs no introduction. He's a luminary in the history of custom rod building. Jim's been building and repairing rods since the early 70s. Jim is the author of A Guide to Thread Weaving for the Custom Rod Builder. And he is also the designer and inventor of the Wonder Weaver. So if you've ever seen some of these incredible weaves and someone told you it was the Dragon Master who did them, that is my guest today. And we're going to talk all about Jim's experience and talk about weaving and talk about his book and talk about anything he wants to talk about because he's one of the rod fathers. So without further ado, welcome Jim Upton.
And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm excited about this one. It took us a long time to get you scheduled. I was talking to your friend and mine, Tom Kirkman, some time back, and he said, "Oh, you ought to have who you ought to have on is Jim Upton." And I said, "Oh gosh, I haven't seen or heard from Jim in forever. Do you know how to get in touch with him?" And he said, "Well, actually, I do because I've spoken to him a couple of times." And so it was Tom got me your number. And Tom told me, "Hey, don't call at 3 o'clock on whatever because you're talking to your sister at the same time
My,
every day," which I think is wonderful, and I want to hear more about. But it's literally been like a year in the making, and so thank you very much for joining me, Jim. I appreciate it.
it's truly my pleasure, and it's my sister-in-law.
Oh, sister-in-law. Okay, all right,
Yeah,
excellent. Now,
yeah.
a lot of people are going to be listening to this and just hearing the audio, right? And that's how most people do podcasts. But we also will be posting the video of it on YouTube. And do my eyes deceive me, or are you wearing a dragon shirt as we're interviewing?
This is a Rain Spooner commemorative shirt for the Year of the Dragon, which
It's what
is
it
the
looks
shape.
like. Yeah.
Yes,
Well, I appreciate the attention to detail. That was subtle, but I see it and I appreciate it. It's got us definitely in the mood. So I asked all my guests, how did you get into fishing in the first place, and how did you get into rod repair and rod building?
as a young child in the neighborhood of 9 or 10 years old, my family had a boat,
Okay.
and we spent most of our summers at Catalina Island.
Oh,
And
okay.
I spent a lot of time in the water,
Yeah.
both fishing and diving. So I started fishing in earnest as a very young dude
Yeah.
here on the West Coast at Catalina Island.
Yeah. Excellent. Did they have you heard of the Catalina wine mixer, this big social event?
No,
Okay, well, that predates it, but that you may have made the island famous. So you've just been diving and fishing from a young age. How did you start rod building or repairing rods? Was that just out of necessity, or?
yeah, I was an avid marlin fisherman, and I like a lot of guys that don't have a lot of money in their pocket. Uh, I figured that I could either repair or build my own rods cheaper than I could buy them.
And you were
Wrong.
a pioneer of light line marlin fishing, right? You were fishing early on. You were fishing pretty light setups.
Yes, my friends and I enjoyed light line fishing
Hmm.
and the marlin fishing, and 20-30 pound test was our common thing.
Yeah.
My wife, who is passed away now, was an excellent light line fisherman.
Yeah.
She used to fish Bonita on 2 pound test.
Oh, my.
And
That's funny. I
uh,
thought you said 2 pound test.
I did say 2 pound test. And
She's a better angler than
she had the
me.
patience for it.
My goodness.
And fortunately, I developed enough knowledge to build her the kind of rod to use for it.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
back in those days, when you're light line fishing that way, um, it's nice to have a rod that bends in what we used to call the big C,
Yeah,
because it distributes that pressure along the rod and keeps the pressure on the fish without overtaxing the line. So I
sure.
would build her rods to accommodate the kind of fishing that she was doing.
Hmm.
And we had the one that I recall the most was a Bonita. We had a run of large Bonita one year,
Okay.
and I even used rubber bands as a shock leader in order to keep from snapping off that 2 pound
That
test
two
line.
pound test. Yeah.
Yeah, and she had one on for a good 45 minutes,
Oh, wow.
and that thing found the only piece of kelp in the whole ocean out here in front of Newport Beach,
Right.
and ran straight underneath it and broke her off.
Uh,
That's what she said.
yeah. Well, that was not what I was thinking. I was keeping it clean for public consumption, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, she probably said that too.
Yeah. Well, she could be forgiven. It hurts your feelings
Yes.
to lose a fish, especially at
Yeah.
the end when you've already put 45
Oh,
minutes into it.
yeah, and looking for a world record.
Yeah. Where did you back then, where did you get supplies and blanks and guides and components and things?
I went to two tackle shops down there. One of them was called Baldi's, that
Okay.
was out on by the Newport Pier,
Hmm.
and the other one, boy, the name that it turned into a gun shop,
Oh,
and his name, oh, nice kid too. His name slips my mind. It's
escapes you.
been
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I
Well,
think of
that's
it in the middle of the night tonight, I'll call you.
yeah, call me. You can call me. You have my number. You just call me whenever. That's fine. As long as it doesn't interfere with your calls to your sister-in-law.
Don't worry
So,
about that. She knows we're doing this podcast, so I'm not in trouble if I don't call at 3.
okay, perfect. Good deal. I don't want to get you in trouble, man.
Oh no.
So you've been building rods and started building things, the big C kind of really chasing some really specific things. I mean, trying to get a world record Bonita on 2 pound, test is
Mhm.
is an extreme use case, right? So um when did you get into weaving and were you always interested in the decorative aspects or like talk me through that?
Well, um, my brother and I, when uh, we used to do off-roading down in Baja, and
Okay. In
worked
cars or
on our
bikes or
cars,
okay, yeah.
four wheel in it, and
Hmm.
every time we worked on the cars and you took something off, you painted it and put it back on so that people know you'd been there.
Okay.
So, so when I started repairing rods and so forth, I developed my own color code for guide wraps and a little decorative butt wrap.
Yeah.
And then with the advent of my finding Clemens books on custom rod building,
Mm-hmm.
I tried doing the cross wraps,
Mm.
and I used to spend a whole day out in the garage, putting cross wraps on a rod or something of that nature. And anyway,
Yeah.
um, I got bored with it,
Okay. Yeah.
and a friend of mine and I went to a Fred Hall show,
Yeah.
years and years ago, and he and Doc Ski were friends.
Okay.
And so we stopped by Doc's booth, and
Yeah.
and I had wanted a dragon woven on a rod that wrapped all the way around the rod. So I had asked this friend of mine, Pat Doyle, if he would do it for me. He's a rod weaver.
Gosh, I haven't heard that name in forever.
Have you heard of Pat?
Oh yeah,
Pat makes
absolutely.
Pat makes some beautiful rods.
He
I mean,
did.
absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Anyway, Pat and I were talking to Doc about it, and I asked Doc if he could do it for me, and he said no. that so far as he knew, it had never been done,
Yeah,
and that nobody'd pay him what it was going to take to figure out how to do it.
sure.
So when we walked away from there, I looked at Pat and I said, "Well, I'm going to do it." And he said, "Yeah, I bet you will." Took me a year and a half to figure out how to do that.
Did he really? Well, I'm just sitting here trying to think what the left list would be like when you're going all the way around the blank. And this makes sense that you developed the Wonder Weaver because there wasn't a tool that was designed to weave on more than one side of the rod.
Correct. And there still isn't, other than the Wonder Weaver.
Right. Yeah.
Everything in those days was all on a single axis.
Sure.
And though you could have put flat looms on both sides of the rod and done a couple,
Sure.
but there are some inherent problems with setting up two separate weaves at one time and
Sure. Yeah.
getting those two weaves centered
Right.
uh, from top to bottom on the rod. So anyway, I, through trial and error and mostly error, uh, developed the Wonder Weaver.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, it's still the only device that
Oh, yeah.
you can use to weave 360 degrees.
Yep. And Renzetti's still making them, still selling them, and it's still the
Yes,
gold
he is.
standard. Yeah, the gold
Uh,
standard tool.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So you started because you wanted this weave of a dragon all the way around the blank. You obviously learned a ton in that year and a half of making the
Well,
errors and everything else.
when I first started to do a dragon uh, that way, I started with Doc Ski's old method of rolling masking tape back on its stuff and leave the
Mhm.
sticky side out.
Yep, yep.
And I would get maybe a third of the way through this dragon, and all the tape would dry out and the threads would all fall off faster than I was moving them on the front side.
Oh,
And left lists were horrible. And for me, just another place to make a mistake. So
sure. Right.
I stopped using left lists. I
Really
weaved I reweave directly off the pattern.
interesting. I've never
I
seen
was
anyone
sitting
do that before.
I was sitting at the desk I'm sitting at now one night making a left list for that dragon. And I thought to myself, why am I doing this?
Yeah,
Why don't I just leave this ruler that I've got showing me which column I'm on, right where it is, and go over and move the threads on the rod. And when I finish that, make one revolution of the rod, come back over here, move this over one,
do it again. Yeah.
and do it again. And then I can see where I am in the weave. I
Hmm.
don't have to guess. And if I make a mistake, I can see where I made it.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
I just stopped using left lists. That was back in, oh Lord.
Had to be early to mid 90s or something.
I think that the Wonder Weaver was the very first part of 2000,
Yeah.
somewhere in that area.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
So
I remember very vividly. I think you and I have met once before, which I do not expect you would remember, but was a really big deal to me as a
that
young
was
rod
at an
builder.
ICRBE.
Well, I think it was at a Nashville show pre-ICRBE, maybe. Did you go to those
Oh,
shows in Nashville ever? There were a few shows for a
yes.
few years in Nashville
Yeah,
that
I
Tom
did
Kirkman did.
about
Yeah.
3 or 4. That's where I met Tom Kirkman.
Yeah. Okay. That's where I met you, was you were weaving at those things, at the Nashville events. Yeah. But I remember being
I
shocked.
would have been, I would, when I first made that Wonder Weaver, Yeah, I did go to a guild thing
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
Tennessee.
Yep. And I was living in Nashville at the time, and Tom Greek, the
Okay.
guy who started the guild originally, kind of needed someone
Yes.
to be the strong back labor and the errand boy, and that was me. So
Yeah, okay.
so I was
Okay.
his he was the brains and I was the brawn, I guess, of doing shows and setting
Yeah.
everything up. But it was good. I got to meet people like you and people like Doc. I got to meet I got to drive Gary Loomis around.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have been happier. It was like being thrown in the briar patch for me. It was all good. But I
I'll bet.
remember having seen, and I don't know that rod builders today, there's so much information. There's visual wrap and visual weave, which are wonderful tools.
Yeah.
It's so easy to take a photograph in this world of digital photography and be able to sort of map it into a pattern. I'm not saying there's not still skill there, but
Mhm.
none of this existed when you were doing this, back in the
Well,
day. Were you
y-
drawing patterns on graph paper or how were you coming
no,
up?
I am not an artist. I'm not a talented person. I'm a technician.
I would, okay, all right.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what I would do, uh, and I know Dave Boyle,
Okay, yeah,
and
me too.
yeah, I know. I saw a podcast that you did with him,
Okay, yeah.
but back in the day, there was a guy by the name of Jim. Oh my, that had a an old DOS weaving program,
Mm-hmm.
and I had his program for a little while until my computer died, and I lost it.
Yeah.
So what I did after that was go to a weaving, a not weaving, if you can see it, an embroidery program.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it was one that was designed to take a photograph and put it into that program, and then you could make an embroidery pattern out of it.
Interesting.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the embroidery pattern is done on a grid
Okay.
the same way you do a weaving pattern.
Yep.
So I would use that. Can I say the name?
Sure.
PC Stitch.
Okay. BC
And
Stitch.
yeah, it's a powerful program, and
Yep.
any photograph you put into it, you can change it into either a color weave or a black and white weave. I've done, obviously color change weaves in it,
Mm-hmm.
and black and white ones. I did a weave on a rod for my great grandson when he was 2
Mm.
with
Well,
his
yeah.
picture.
Well, and you've done some photos and some kind of almost like what I would consider hyper realistic portraits, right? And so now that makes sense if you're able to take a photo and kind of convert it. That's I
Mhm.
would
I
argue that that you're just a technician, that you're not an artist, but that's okay. We can have that argument another day. But
I want credit to go where the credit is due, and the dragons that I do are primarily stolen from tattoos.
yep.
And flash tattoo flash is all over the place. So I have
Okay.
hundreds of different, dragon images and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So
Well, I tell you what, I have occasion to be in Japan a couple of times a year at least,
mhm.
and I usually go to either the Yokohama or Osaka show, which is kind of like their JAFTMA, there's kind of like their
Yeah.
AFTMA, I mean, or their ICAST. The influence of your dragon weaves is still, I see pictures of we should talk about this weave because probably this baby dragon weave is
Mhm.
probably the most famous custom rod in the world. I mean, I say custom rod, it's a
Well,
weave, but
okay, let me correct you. It is not on a rod.
right, it's just a weave on a yeah.
Yes. That was an exercise in what your eye sees and what it does, and what your mind sees.
Yeah.
And if you took that baby dragon and took all of the black out of it, what's left is the design. The black background, actually your mind forms the boundaries of that particular dragon.
Interesting.
And I played with that. I've done two or three of those in prior to the baby dragon,
Hmm.
and to exploit what your mind does with reference to what you're looking at, as opposed to what's actually there.
Yeah, and if you've never seen this weave, I'll just for people who might not have seen it, I'll share with you. It's on the cover of this book that Jim wrote that's called A Guide to Thread Weaving for the Custom Rod Builder, and it's a remarkable weave of a baby dragon. It's sort of I'd say it's green. That's way oversimplifying it, but it overall exhibits sort of a green skin, and has a ton of detail and a ton of. And now that I've never noticed that, but now that you mentioned that, I'm sitting here looking at the picture, and I guess your eye
You can
does
see
fill
the
in.
mistakes.
Oh, no, that's not what I was gonna say. It looks perfect to me. It's interesting that the black lets your mind fill in the parts. You're seeing things that
Correct.
aren't actually there, but as an image, it all works together.
Yes. Yeah. That and credit where credit is due. That's the head of a lap dragon that was made by Melody Pena.
Melody Pena. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Well, I have
She
no
she
idea if
does
we have any tattoo artists that listen to the podcast, but thank you, Melanie, for this enduring
Melody.
image that Jim used.
Yeah, it's Melody
Melody. I'm
Pena.
sorry, Melody. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and she does some beautiful dragons.
Well, that's a beautiful dragon.
Yeah.
And I was surprised. So I had seen pictures of these dragons that you were doing, and you did a lot more than just that one. But
Hmm.
on rodbuilding.org, on this sort of the
Yes.
photo posts and everything,
The
and
old,
yeah, the
yeah.
Tom's board that he started that now, North Fork Composites runs now, but he
Right.
and it's still sort of like the principal gathering place for rod builders online. It's a great forum, but I was so surprised to meet you. I just assumed I knew you're from California, and I just assumed that you would be Japanese or Japanese American. And then when I met you, I was like, oh, this dude's just doing dragons. Talk about things your mind sees that aren't there, right? I guess I
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
uh,
you got it.
and
You
and
got it.
and
Well, when
those.
you're in Osaka, you ought to visit Hero.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'd love to. And he's a legendary weaver over there, right? And
Oh,
giving credit to where credit is
Hero
due. Yeah.
Hero has talent.
Oh, yeah. Well,
He
I could argue
definitely
you do
has
too,
talent.
but yeah, and he's still doing it, and there's a whole there, it may be hard if you're not spend any time, and I'm no great authority. I'm learning my way around Japan and around Asia, but the dragon is a very powerful symbol, a very ageless
Oh,
symbol. There's a ton of
yes.
mythology and lore, almost bordering on religion. This level of sort of belief and emotion that goes along with the dragons, and the dragon is a very important symbol, right? And
Oh,
so
without a doubt.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's good that you were able to have North America represented with a stake in the ground in the dragon game. But so you just you got the image from Melody Pena, and
I what
how
I
did it go ahead,
what
sorry.
I did was take a picture
Okay.
uh, of one of her the lap dragon,
Okay.
and just cut the body off of it
Okay.
so that I had the head, and went ahead and made the pattern from that.
Interesting. And so was it color or was it
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I added color, uh, so they were a little more defined
Mhm.
than they would have been on the actual dragon itself. The actual piece of artwork that she did.
Mhm.
But yeah, Yeah, the PC Stitch program helps you do that
Okay.
because you can, let's say you have uh, a picture of that dragon and there's 30 shades of red.
Okay.
Okay. In PC Stitch, you can reduce those shades of red to one.
Oh, interesting.
So you can take all the shades of gray and keep reducing that until you get to a point that you can handle. For me, a color change weave can have up to 7 colors.
Hmm.
And of course, then I've got to stack those all up in that particular uh, uh, column or thread slot,
Right.
not column. The each one of the threads.
Sure.
And so some of those slots in the Wonder Wood will have as many as 7 different threads in them.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
you also did one, Jim, that was like the lap dragon hatching out of the egg, maybe? Or was that
Hmm.
somebody else doing another dragon? Was that not you?
That
It
that
might have
I
been
think
Hero.
no, who did that? Somebody, another guy sent me a picture of a weave that he did with the rod coming out of its mouth.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and a baby dragon in a cup. I think Melody Pena has one like that, but I don't remember a weave of that particular subject.
So I'm sitting here while we're talking and I'm Googling Melody and I come it
Mhm.
comes up with Windstone Editions, right?
Windstone
And
editions, yes.
yeah, and I look up lap dragons and this looks like exactly the dragon, the head of the dragon.
Hmm.
So when did you know? So you said you did that weave as an exercise. That weave sort of set the world on fire for a while. When did you know that you had sort of tapped a nerve or something or kind of like created a sensation with that weave
When Tom's photo section there on rodbuilding.org lit
and
up.
in the magazine, Rodmaker magazine? Yeah.
Well, that came a little later, but
Yeah.
uh, I I have to tell you that Tom is probably responsible for me. He and I met at one of the last um, conclaves
Hmm.
before he was just getting started uh, hooking up with his fly fishing guide that put on the fly fishing show,
Yep.
and uh, Tom Tom has been responsible for uh, my public life. Let's put it that way. From the very beginning, he's the one that suggested that I write the book,
Yep.
and uh, that turned out to be a lot bigger deal than I thought it was going to be.
They
As
left that
as
part
did the
out, right?
wonder, as did the Wonder Weaver. Yeah, it sent me on a trip that uh, I could never have imagined.
Well, it's a wonderful book, and I know I treasure my copy. Is it still in print, or
It is. I've considered. I told my accountant that I was going to stop publishing it, and I have had a brief conversation with Renzetti about it. I need to talk to Lily. She's the boss,
oh yeah,
and um, what I'd like to do is turn that over to them because it's a natural to couple it to the Wonder Weaver,
sure, yeah,
and if they decide they don't want to do that, then I'll approach a couple of other people that may want to handle that. But
sure.
I'm getting too old for that. I
I hear
I
you.
just My days nowadays center around my two girls, the dogs, and what we're going to have for dinner.
Hey, well, these are important decisions.
Yeah,
Do they ever outvote you and you have to eat dog food?
they always outvote me.
Well, that's what you get for asking. I should have known when you
Yeah,
said it was two females and you that you were going to come out on the short end of the stick. That's how it works at my house.
you got it. You got it. That's exactly correct.
Oh man. So you do the dragon weave. That goes a big deal. You write the book. You help Renzetti bring the Wonder Weaver to market. Are you still building these days? Do you still fish?
Uh, no, I haven't been fishing for mm, probably 5 or 6 years now. Um, some local bass fishing in the bay.
Sure.
Uh, that that ended probably about the same time my wife died, which was
Yeah.
6 years ago.
Sorry.
Prior to that, I would drive down to San Diego and fish Mission Bay
Mm,
in a small boat. Love doing that,
yeah.
but uh, making that drive nowadays for me is, yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to leave the dogs for longer than 3 or 4 hours because they're cooped
Sure.
up in their house.
Yeah.
And driving to San Diego is an hour and a half at best, and then another 2 hours to get home. Yeah,
Yeah.
doesn't leave any time for much fun.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Well, and you've also demonstrated, I know you have been in the if people are interested in learning more about your work, your style of doing things, what you've developed with this more than one axis kind of 360 concept of weaving, they've got the book. There's also several YouTubes. There's a wonderful YouTube video of you kind of giving an overview of how to set up the Wonder Weaver and get a weave started that you've videoed at PCS, I think, or Fred Hall, one of those shows several years ago.
Uh, I did. I don't remember Fred Hall. I had uh, my son's uh, video guy here one time and made the videotape that Renzetti provides with the Wonder Weaver
Oh
to
yeah. Yeah,
tell you how to set it up
right.
and start doing a weave. There are plenty of uh, videos out there. Doc Ski's probably done 100 of them
Yeah, yeah,
on how to weave, and
right.
so there wasn't really much sense in my repeating what they've already done.
Sure.
The issue with the Wonder Weaver and multiple axes is explained in the book, but is one where, if you stop and think about it, if you're going to do a weave on multiple axes or different weaves on different axes, you definitely not need to know how to set that up
Right,
because you want those weaves centered
right,
lengthwise as well as on the axis that you want them on.
right.
And
There's a lot,
there,
there's a lot there.
there's a lot there that you don't
Yeah.
think about until you get into it and think, oh.
Yeah, well,
and, and
just the difficulty of sizing the pattern and orienting the pattern with just a one axis pattern, and I'm not saying any
Mhm,
of it's simple, but then you start to compound that around, you're working on a cylinder with some taper, and I
correct.
mean there's a lot to
There's a
I
lot
I'm
going on that
yeah,
you need to think about just to get started. But once
yeah,
you get it started, the concept of moving a thread from the right side to the left side, once you understand that
yeah.
and develop a method that
Hmm.
that you are consistent with,
Hmm.
then it all begins to get easy until you get old.
Yeah, well, look, nothing like the
Hey,
eyes and a little
I
trimmer in
I
your hands, right? Yeah.
no, it's attention,
Oh,
the
really? Okay.
ability to maintain your concentration
Yeah.
and uh, what you're doing. And
Yeah.
for senior citizens, it does, unless you're accustomed to going and doing it every day,
Yeah.
it requires concentration.
Tremendous amount of concentration. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
It's interesting. You and I were talking before we started the podcast. Um, One of the things that I am observing in the rod building community right now, it's thriving and it's growing, and there's sort of it never went away, so I won't call it a comeback, but there's a renaissance of weaving and color change weaving kind of going on right now. To
Oh,
me,
really?
there's more people weaving now than there were 10 years ago, right? And that's very interesting. There's a guy from Georgia named James Ormsby. He's started doing it and is basically self-taught off of all the materials that you put out there, Doc's put out there, everybody. And he came to an event and he was kind of hemming and hawing about, yeah, well, I've been weaving for a little while. I'm starting to do some weaves and whatever. And then he pulls out these weaves and they're like, oh my gosh, these are amazing, right? And
Hmm.
so but he's a firefighter. This was interesting because we were talking before, and you were
Yeah.
a firefighter and then an arson investigator, right?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
maybe there's something about the Jared Taylor is a fireman. He's another very talented rod builder in Indiana. Maybe there's something going on here with the firefighters
Well, you
and
got a
the
day
rod
off.
building and weaving. Yeah, well, there's
Yeah, yeah.
that, right? You got to kill time at the station, right?
Well, no, you've got a day off,
Yeah, yeah.
and once you get the honeydew list taken care of, you,
Oh, wait,
you,
that gets taken care of ever? That list ends?
well, let's put it this way: when she lets you have some time off,
Thank you. I'll allow it. That sounds more like it. That's I just want to
yeah,
keep it real. This is a reality-based podcast.
you got it,
We're not
you got it.
overproducing this, right? So,
Right.
mm. So is the baby lap dragon, is that your favorite weave, or do you have a favorite weave of all time or a favorite build?
I have some uh that I the baby dragon has to be right up there,
Yeah,
only because of what it is and what it's
right.
done. It, as I said, put me on a trip that I never thought I'd ever take. But
Hey man, made you
uh,
world famous, literally.
yeah,
Globally famous.
yeah. Uh, I think that the picture that I I did a picture of a lady named Irma uh, Christian.
Okay.
Irma lives on, or lived, she's dead now, on Pitcairn Island.
Okay.
You know where that is?
Vaguely. I've not been
All
there.
right. You've heard of Mutiny on the Bounty?
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, that's Pitcairn is the island that the mutineers landed on.
Right. That's the only reason I know it.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Irma is a direct descendant of Fletcher Christian.
Oh wow.
And I did a weave of her for her son. Well, actually, I sent it to Melva uh, Warren Evans. Uh, I think Irma's daughter, but I'm not positive about that.
Okay.
And she turned it over to Dennis, Irma's son.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis sent me back a handmade model of the bounty and signed it.
Oh wow. From a
Yeah, that's what
direct
I said.
descendant. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Not how many people in the world have part of their artwork on Pitcairn Island?
Not many. Not
I
me.
think I think there's still 40 people there.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So
That is amazing.
when I say the trip that baby dragon sent me off on is just unbelievable. I can't tell you how amazed I am at the things that have occurred since I did that.
Yeah, well, you have inspired a lot of rod builders, and it continues to do so today. It's a heck of a legacy, so you should be very proud. And as someone who values this community, I'm very grateful for your contribution to it.
Oh, I thank you. It's a labor of love. It isn't,
Sure.
anything that I really set out to do because that isn't what I did for a living.
Yeah.
Though, I did work for Seeker Rods for a while
Hmm.
and learned a lot about uh, rod actual uh, building, the blanks themselves.
Yeah. What did you do
So
for Seeker?
I was their I was their customer service uh, guy that took everybody's. Well, I was just fishing with it.
Yeah, I set the hook and it broke.
Yeah, when actually it's the deckhand that picked it up by the tip end of the rod
Right.
and lifted the fish out of the water when it broke.
Right. Yeah. Funny how that happens, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
So, but I worked for Seeker probably about 4 or 5 years
Okay.
and learned a lot from the foreman there, Randy Penny. I don't know if you've ever heard of him
Oh
before.
yeah, yeah. I met Randy, know exactly who he is. He's at United Composites now, and he's
Yeah,
sort
he
of
owns
the
that.
godfather of the rail rod, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, Randy is really knowledgeable,
Yeah.
and I learned a lot from him.
I'd love to get him on the podcast and talk about railroads, but I don't know if he's the warm fuzzy podcast type.
Uh,
Makes a heck of a product though.
I would be inclined to say probably not, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It it it.
The last time I spoke to him, I spoke to him about 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm a big fan of United Composites products, as
Hmm.
I am of CalStar's products, Seeker's products, a lot of people's products, right?
Hmm.
But there's a certain quality to a lot of their blanks I've always really enjoyed, and I've built some that have just there's people who once they get on that action, they don't want anything else, right? And so I'm a very avid slow pitch jigger, and this is kind of an ultralight, passive jigging kind of technique. And I went to him and I said, man, I really, really wish that you guys would make a slow pitch blank. And he basically came
Hmm.
back and said, there's 377 blanks in the catalog. I'm sure one of them will work. Go find it.
Well, that reminds me of how do you figure out how to build one of those? Have you been in one of their shops and seen all of the mandrels that are lined up across the walls?
It's a
And
lot.
then
Yeah.
somebody has to say, well, I want mandrel number 101, whatever. You
Right.
okay?
Oh yeah. My daughter's home from school. I was just saying hi to her.
Oh, okay. Uh, mandrel such and such. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
going to build that
And we're gonna roll it from here to here and then trim it from here to here and all
right.
that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and he
yeah.
understands and knows that.
No, sure. Yeah. No, he
You
builds
know.
a fine product. Yeah. And
Yeah,
man, those the
I wanted him to build fly rods, but he won't do it.
yeah.
So and I probably do more fly rods now than anything.
Really?
Yeah,
Saltwater
yeah.
mostly or freshwater trout rods or what?
Yeah, well, they're freshwater.
Hmm.
Uh, my all my kids have moved up to Oregon,
Oh, okay.
so they've got plenty of lakes around them and that sort of
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
And my grandson is out on a farm in Texas,
Yeah.
and the other two boys are down in San Diego.
Okay.
But one of them is he and his family are hardly ever there because they go to Block Island all the time.
Yeah.
So uh, but the girls, my oldest boy's wife and my daughter like the fly fishing thing,
Yeah.
and So I've made fly rods for them, and my son's got one on order, and I've made fly rods for my doctor who's now retired,
Yeah.
and I made a weave. I put a weave on his. Are you familiar with the Maui Jim parrot?
Yes.
Well, I made a weave of that parrot, and if you look at it, it's got dark glasses.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a cool guy.
Right.
Okay, so this doctor of mine is a cool guy,
Yeah.
kind of colorful.
Okay.
Okay, finds himself out on a limb on occasion.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, but if you look clear down at the bottom of the weave, you'll see little white flecks down there, which will tell you he's still full of crap.
again, with the attention to detail. I don't know. I don't. I would be scared now, based on that, to have you build me anything. You're putting the goods on everybody out there for in
Well,
perpetuity.
I did one for Renzetti of that same bird, but I took one of the claws off of his foot. Or we can add to that, not quite all there.
Yeah. Oh, if you've not met Andy, that will not make sense to you, but I'm not gonna reveal it, and once you meet him, you'll get it. Well, I tell you what, when I bought my very first lathe, and it was a Renzetti lathe, and it
Hmm.
was at one of those guild shows in Nashville, and and for a while he was also selling kind of like a Tag micro lathe, a little small metal lathe that you could just make some parts, like some slip ring and cap, flywheel seats
Hmm.
and stuff, with
Hmm.
nothing real heavy duty as a machine lathe goes, but very capable. And he's like, "You got any experience running a lathe?" And I said, "No, sir, I don't." And he showed me that hand, and he was like, "I'm a master machinist, and this happened to me. Be careful." And boy, it's
Yeah,
stuck. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, yeah,
I've had a healthy fear and respect of the lathe ever since.
yeah. You got it. It whirs pretty fast.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. That and I one time I was in a hurry and I was trying to get something done, and I didn't have the mandrel size diameter I needed that was countersunk with the 60-degree recess for the live center.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
said, "Well, I wonder if I can just turn this thing, it's about 8 inches long." I said, "I wonder if I could just," and I turned it a little bit and got away with it until I didn't. And it literally shot out of that lathe. And at the time
Oh yeah.
I was working in a unfinished basement in our house in Nashville, and it literally went halfway through this 2x6 floor joist,
Hmm.
and I was like, that would have gone through me. And ever since then, I'm very conscientious with my safety equipment and
Yeah,
with
you got
checking
it.
the checklist, the pre-flight checklist. You don't get many mistakes with that kind of stuff. You got to be careful.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome that still building the fly rods and getting to do them for your family. I love hearing that your son has one on order that's not been fulfilled yet. We'll
Well, I have one for me
yeah.
uh, with a dragon that will cover pretty much 360 degrees,
Mm.
and the blank for it is on my rod lathe right now. I have no idea what you can see in the background.
Well, I was gonna say, I'm looking in the background. I see your lathe, I see your Renzetti back there, and I see some thread on the shelf, and I see some
Well, let me
240
turn this
finish and stuff
just
up there.
just a little bit,
Oh, there it is.
and
Wow.
above it, I don't know if you can see above it.
I can see that dragon pattern. Yeah.
That's it.
Wow.
That's
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 going
like a
on that rod.
three-dimensional. It's like the dragon, the flying dragon coming towards you.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
It
It's
looks beautiful from
absolutely
here.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could sell that one in Japan, I promise.
That one wouldn't be sold either.
Well,
That'll
yeah.
end up being a family heirloom if I
Hey,
ever
well,
get it done.
when you get it done. When you get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, I'm so glad you're still at it, man. So we got to try to get you out to PCS one of these times. It's going strong in Costa Mesa.
Uh I was there year before this last. I did not make it out there this last year.
Oh gosh,
I
I was
usually,
there a year before last. Like I'm bummed I didn't see you. Did you go by and see Bill Batson or where were you? Or were you
yeah,
with
I was in Batson's booth.
how in the world did I miss you? That's crazy.
Uh, um, Docsky was in the booth.
Yeah, I was gonna say Doc was there.
Uh, uh,
Todd Dabrowski was there.
yeah,
Captain Todd. Like, who else? Yeah, there's a bunch of people.
Darren Dohey across the hall.
Yep, at 310 Rodworks, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if we get you back out there one of these times, I'll buy you a beer or something, buy you lunch, something. I owe you. It'd be great to catch up.
Well, I'd love it. I'd
Well,
love it.
let's do it. I'll be there. I'll be
Yeah.
there at PCS. Lord willing, I'll be there at PCS next year. So we'll talk offline between now and
Well,
then, and we'll set something
yeah,
up.
give me a call
I
and
will.
let's make sure that I'm still capable.
Okay.
I've been diagnosed with heart failure and so I can't really guarantee
Well, nothing in
a
life is
whole
a
lot.
guarantee. Yeah. It's funny, I'm trying to think, as near as I can tell, I think we probably met in Nashville about 1998 or 1999. And
That would be
and
about
you
right.
basically
Yeah.
look exactly the same to me, and I look much older and different than I did, back then 20 plus years ago. Whatever you and the dogs are eating at night, it's working for you.
Good. Good, because I'm the one that's fixing it.
Oh, there we go. Oh man. Well, Jim, it was such a pleasure to catch up with you. Just again, I can't say enough about your amazing work. I mean, even somebody like Doc Ski will say there's nobody can do weaves like Jim Upton. The intricacy and the level of detail and the complexity and the difficulty. It's just you are one of a kind and a true master, my friend. And you're also very humble and gracious and always willing to share your time and teach others. And I'm so grateful for it. You're a real gem of a person and a cornerstone of the rod building community. And so on behalf of everybody, not that I'm any honorary captain or anything, but thank you so much for all you've done. And I hope your influence continues to go strong. And there's new people getting into weaving with their Wonder Weavers today. I see it all the time. And so I hope that makes you proud.
Well, it does make me proud, and I thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, we'll talk again. You're welcome anytime. You're one of the Rod fathers. You're an OG. So we always have time on the calendar for you, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you. And thanks everybody so much for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe and download wherever you get your podcast content. And we'll see you on the next episode.